Welcome to Voices in the Dark, where darkness comes to life and the whispers in the night tell stories no one else dares to share. Here you'll find chilling tales, cursed legends, and paranormal cases that defy reality. From encounters with the unknown to unsolved mysteries, each story will push you to the edge of fear. If you think you're safe in the comfort of your room, think again. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and dare to listen. But be careful. Some stories aren't just tales. Some follow you. Are you ready to step into the darkness? Subscribe and find out. The Last Passenger. Chapter 1. The Graveyard Shift. Diego had been a night bus driver for over 5 years. It wasn't the best job, but the pay was decent, and he enjoyed the peace of empty streets in the early hours. Less traffic, less noise, fewer problems. That night, the air was freezing. The city lights flickered in the distance, and the few people left on the streets hurried home, eager to escape the cold. Diego was driving his last route before ending his shift. There were only a handful of passengers, most dozing off or lost in their headphones, oblivious to the world. At the second-to-last stop, everyone got off. Diego checked his rearview mirror. Empty. He sighed, closed the doors, and started the bus again. Just one last stop and he could go home. He turned on the radio to keep himself awake. An old 80s song played with slight static, adding an eerie atmosphere to the lonely night. Then, in a single blink, he realized he was no longer alone. Chapter 2. The Man in the Long Coat. A passenger was sitting in the last row. Diego was certain no one had gotten on. The man was tall and thin, wearing a long, dark coat. His face was hidden in the shadows. A chill ran down Diego's spine. Something about this passenger unsettled him, but he tried to brush it off. Maybe he had boarded while Diego wasn't paying attention. "Final stop in 5 minutes, sir," he called out professionally. No response. The man didn't move, not even a twitch. Diego swallowed hard. The passenger wasn't making a single sound. He tried to focus on the road, but his rearview mirror betrayed him. He kept glancing at it. And then he noticed something terrifying. The man's reflection in the mirror was distorted. His legs seemed too long, his torso too thin, and his face, though barely visible, had no eyes. Chapter 3. The Passenger Who Didn't Get Off. The bus reached the final stop. Diego turned off the radio and looked back. "Last stop, sir. The route ends here." Silence. The passenger didn't move. A knot tightened in Diego's stomach. Maybe he was asleep. He stood up and walked toward the back of the bus. Each step echoed in the silence. "Sir, we've arrived. You have to get off." The seat was empty. A shiver crawled up Diego's spine. The passenger was gone. He scanned the bus, looking for a logical explanation. There was no way he could have left without Diego noticing. But then, something made his breath hitch. The last row was damp. The fabric glistened as if someone had been sitting there soaked to the bone. And the overwhelming scent of damp earth filled the air. Chapter 4. The Cold Whisper. Diego rushed back to the driver's seat. He needed to leave immediately. He started the bus and pressed the gas pedal. He just wanted to get to the depot and forget this ever happened. But then the rearview mirror showed something impossible. The passenger was back, sitting in the last row. And this time, he was staring directly at Diego. A suffocating cold settled in the air. Diego's hands trembled on the steering wheel. The man's mouth slowly opened, but he had no tongue. And then, a chilling whisper brushed against Diego's ear. "You shouldn't have looked." Diego's blood ran cold. He turned around abruptly. The seat was empty again. But now, muddy footprints stretched forward, toward him. Chapter 5. The Forbidden Recording. Diego could no longer drive. He pulled over to the side of the road and grabbed his phone with trembling hands. He accessed the bus's security cameras and rewound the footage. When he reached the moment he had first seen the passenger, his heart stopped. There was no one. On the recording, he was talking to himself. The back seat had always been empty. Diego felt nausea rising in his throat. This couldn't be real. But then, he fast-forwarded to the moment of the whisper and saw something worse. A pale face with sunken eyes and an unnaturally wide grin loomed right behind his seat. And when the video reached the present moment, the face turned toward the camera and smiled. Chapter 6, The Final Ride. Diego screamed and dropped his phone. He started the bus and hit the gas pedal. He had to get out of there. But the streetlights flickered. The engine sputtered. The whispers returned, now closer. "You shouldn't have looked." A creaking sound from behind him. Diego glanced at the mirror and saw that the passenger was now standing right behind him. And with a voice like shattered glass, the last thing Diego heard was, "Now you will be the last passenger." Epilogue: The Cursed Bus. The next morning, the bus was found at the final stop. The engine still running. The driver's seat was empty. Diego was gone. Investigators reviewed the security footage, but the files were corrupted. Only one fragment survived. In it, Diego stared at the rearview mirror, his face frozen in terror. And behind him, a tall, thin figure smiling, its eyes lost in the abyss. Since that night, they say that sometimes when a driver is alone on a late-night bus, they might see a passenger sitting in the last row. And if they look for too long, they never reach their destination. And so, another story comes to an end. Or at least, that's what we like to believe. But remember, fear doesn't always fade when the video stops. Sometimes it stays with you. If you dare to hear more chilling tales, subscribe and join this community of brave souls seeking the truth in the darkness. See you in the next story, if you manage to sleep tonight. Until next time, if you survive.